Hi, my name is Meredith, and my project is called Rideaucrest Home Garden. And in this project, I focused on restorative design for people in long-term care. My site is located in Kingston, Ontario. For those who don't know, it's partway between Toronto and Ottawa along the Highway 401. And the facility that I chose to study is called Rideaucrest Home, and it sits on the shore of the Cataraqui River, which connects to the Rideau Canal system. And the property boundary is shown here in this outer white line, and I am focusing on this garden space here in this courtyard. When I first visited the garden, I was at first struck with this feeling of enclosure within these walls upon first entering the space. And following the circular path, it took me around to see all of the rooms on the first floor, mostly right now with all the lights off and the occasional worker in full PPE walking by. And as I followed the path around, the space really opens up and you get this nice view of the Cataraqui River. It'd be nicer in the summer, but it was nice in the moment. And behind the river's behind this public park, which is lined with willow trees. And after visiting a few times, I really wanted to draw on this feeling of enclosure within these walls and maybe see if I could provide protection from the wind, making a comfortable space on this side, while at the same time drawing on the feeling of exposure on this side of the garden and connecting to the surrounding context. And of course, with this being a long-term care home, I really wanted to address some of the devastation caused by the pandemic in these facilities, especially out here in Ontario and Quebec, where infection rates are quite extreme and the situation is quite horrendous. Residents are, of course, isolated from each other and from their family, but perhaps most significantly, they're isolated from their caregivers, the staff of these homes, and they're no longer receiving as much physical touch from their staff. So that might be in the form of hand-holding, hugging, massaging, etc., which is actually normally a part of their therapeutic regime. So with that, I want to create a therapeutic touch garden for people with dementia in long-term care to make them feel more at home. And I took inspiration from a dementia garden in Australia, where I think they did a really good job of tailoring these sensorial experiences to people with dementia to stimulate memory, calm, and joy, all while being safe and accessible. So then I went on and I considered all the different things you could possibly touch in a garden, whether that's plants, the elements, wildlife, built materials, and so on. And I really asked myself, like, how could touch be restorative for people with dementia? And I then thought, what if these touch experiences could be placed into sort of rooms of a house, such as the bath and the kitchen and the library, the patio, the bedroom, and what might these rooms look like, and what types of plants and materials would they have? What's the character of each of these rooms? So with that, I then considered the shade of this courtyard, which is quite strong on the north-facing side, and I decided that I want to create a meandering path that goes in and out of these different shade zones, and especially in designing for dementia, I wanted to make sure that the path formed a closed loop and that the space was itself enclosed for safety concerns. And with that in mind, I then decided to place these distinct experiences along the path, each forming its own room. I then moved on to model making, and using cardboard and wool, I tried to understand how I could use plants to make these spaces, and I started to fill in plant material to see if I could create, some form of mystery and reveal as you walk along the path. And through further iteration, I created spatial hierarchy based on my shade analysis and enhancing this view to the water, which I mentioned before. And I began to then plan circulation and thought about where I might place these different experiences, all while considering views from inside the building and along the path itself. And in my final design, I formed this fully enclosed space, and the program spaces and the built elements, they're in rectilinear form to reflect the architecture of the building, while the path and the planting are in more organic forms to reflect the the natural shapes of the park and surrounding context. And the path itself is made of a different material from the open space here to help guide the walk and connect these different rooms in one cohesive loop. And the large sunny space here, we've got the kitchen with raised beds and a seating area, and the bedroom with seating inlaid into the planting. In the shady area, we've got the bath and the library, and the patio has raised seasonal beds and a framed view out to the water. Residents are able to walk throughout the enclosed garden with independence and autonomy, but are still visible from different viewpoints within the building. And from the main entrance, you can see that this garden design is now hopefully more integrated with the architecture and with the view being framed between these two walls here. I then went on and used wool again to determine the color palette and overall character of the planting for each space. And the layering includes tree canopy for shade, shrub massing to provide structure and define rooms, and seasonal accent plants to help guide the eye around the path. And starting from the main entrance here, I'm now going to walk you through these different spaces, starting with the bath here. So as we walk into this space, we feel the cool shade and hear the trickling water of the fountain, and the smooth big leaves of the hostas and camellias give us a sense of calm. In the library, a small reading nook and texture wall of familiar objects stimulate memory, while smooth benches and thick foliage restore the mind. Around the corner, a bright patio is revealed with a colorful display of spring flowers, and raised beds allow us to smell the blazing star and lily of the valley while seated, and following the path around here, we can get a view out to the park. The path then takes us around to this cozy corner with soft grasses and lamb's ears, and sitting on the bench, we can feel the feathery texture of the grass or reach over and smell the lavender next to us. And finally, we reach the kitchen where we can touch and smell the aromatic herbs in these raised beds. Maybe we'll take some fresh chives and thyme to add to our lunch, or some mint and lavender for a calming cup of tea. Thank you.